Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Vaishnavamscha Shram Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll be reading from chapter number 4, text number 32. In the temple room, this is on page number 248 in the small book. Okay, so let's chant the Sanskrit and translation in unison. Evam bahu vidha yagya vittita brahmano mukhe karma jan viditan sarvan evam gyatva vimoksyase. Translation. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Text 33. Shreyandravamayad yagyaj jnana yagya parantapa sarvam karma kilam bharta jnane parisamapyate. Translation. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice of knowledge is greater than the sacrifice of material possessions. O son of Pritha, after all, the sacrifice of work culminates in transcendental knowledge. Text 34. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Translation. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. Self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Text 35. Yajgyatva na punar moham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutani asheshani Dakshasyatman yato mai. Translation. And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. Papebhya sarvabhya papakritamaha sarvam jnana plavenaiva Vrijjinam santarishyasi. Translation. Even if you are concerned to be the most, I'll repeat again. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Text 37. Yataidhamsi samidhognir bhasmatsat kuruterjuna jnanagni sarvakarmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. Translation. As the blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Text 38. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalenatmani vandati. Translation. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due course of time. Text 39. Shraddhava labhate jnanam tatparasam yatendriyaha jnanam labdhva param shantim achirenadadhigacchati. Translation. A faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Text 40. Agyascha shraddhadanascha sanshayatma vinashyati nayang lokosti na paro na sukham samshayatmanaha. Translation. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Text 41. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchina samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadnati dhananjaya. Translation. Therefore, one who has renounced the fruits of his action, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is situated firmly in the self, is not bound by works, O conqueror of virtues. Text 42, final text. Tasmada jnana sambhutam hritstam jnana sinatmanaha chittaivnam samshayam yogam atishto tishta bharata. Translation. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Page 248, chapter 4, text 32. Translation. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Purport. Different types of sacrifice, as discussed above, are mentioned in the Vedas to suit the different types of worker. Because men are so deeply absorbed in the bodily concept, these sacrifices are so arranged that one can work either with the body, the mind, or the intelligence. But all of them are recommended for ultimately bringing about liberation from the body. This is confirmed by the Lord herewith from his own mouth. Text 33. Translation. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice of knowledge is greater than the sacrifice of material possessions. O son of Pritha, after all, the sacrifice of work culminates in transcendental knowledge. Purport. The purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna consciousness. Nonetheless, there is a mystery about all these different activities of sacrifice, and one should know this mystery. Sacrifices sometimes take different forms according to the particular faith of the performer. When one's faith reaches the stage of transcendental knowledge, the performer of sacrifices should be considered more advanced than those who simply sacrifice material possessions without such knowledge. For without attainment of knowledge, sacrifices remain on the material platform and bestow no spiritual benefit. Real knowledge culminates in Krishna consciousness, the highest stage of transcendental knowledge. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. When, however, they are elevated to the level of transcendental knowledge, all such activities enter onto the spiritual platform. Depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma kanda, fruitive activities, and sometimes jnana kanda, jnana kanda, knowledge in the pursuit of truth. It is better when the end is knowledge. Text 34. Translation. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord, therefore, advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can become a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam says, Dharmam hi sakshad Bhagavad pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he Krishna, as the supreme spiritual as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experience in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its own original identity. But the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 + 1 is equal to 1, and that 1 - 1 is also equal to 1. That is the case in the absolute world. For one of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya, or not actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna, and by Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being as his eternal servitor cannot be separated from Krishna, and his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies, as men, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master, and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter for all living entities, and giving up such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have a separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that they are on the path of liberation, as confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Muktir hitvan yatha rupam swarupena vyavastitihi. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, Krishna consciousness. So I'm kind of enjoying reading these purports. So maybe we can read text 36, or maybe someone else can read. Maharaj?
It's not our natural position to try to think of ourselves as being independent from Krishna, because by nature, we're all Nityai Swarup Krishnadas. Our natural position is servant of Krishna, related with Krishna in service, and that service can take different rasas, different shapes. It can be friendly service, it can be master to servant service, it can be parental service towards Krishna, or as a lover towards Krishna. All these relationships are there in all unlimited different aspects, so that each living entity is fully satisfied with the relationship with Krishna in its perfection. So anything we try to do other than to be Krishna's servant is artificial. It's not natural. And it doesn't work. It doesn't satisfy. Just like in the material world, it's such an attempt. All the living entities are trying to be happy without Krishna. And we see that it doesn't work. Just like the fish trying to be happy outside the water, it's not his habitat, it's not his nature to be outside the water. Similarly, it's not our nature to be without thinking of Krishna all the time. We may think that's egotistic. Why does God want us to think of him all the time and only him and serve him? Why such egotistical demands? But Krishna knows that this is the only way the living entities will be fully satisfied in all circumstances forever.
Yeah, many times we hear that maybe God is selfish, or maybe he's he's unkind, maybe because he forces us to suffer if we don't serve him. Something like that. Maybe we may have that feeling, you know? My hands are tied, you know? But that's just who we are. We're subordinate. We're very small. We're very tiny. So, you know, in one sense, the mother feels that her hands are tied too. Her hands are tied, you know, with the binds of love for a child, maybe. And in this material world, we may see that type of love is, we see that's about as good as it gets, you know, in terms of love in the material world. That selflessness, mother for a child. But it doesn't really touch on the real love from the spiritual platform. Of course, when you add Krishna and you add service to Krishna, then we can really love others in addition. But that's a journey, which is the point of Bhagavad Gita, is that we're learning how to render service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, again, because that's who we are. Our deepest identity, or our most core characteristic is that we are his eternal servant, which is very interesting because many of us don't even know the name of Krishna in this, you know, whole material world. If you think about all the different living entities that exist, all the germs or microbes or fish or birds or trees or persons from different places in the world, they may not remember this name of Krishna. But according to the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and all the acharyas, who are learned scientists and sages, philosophers, they emphatically declare that every single one of those entities, is eternally the personal loving associate of Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in actually, the whole world is in want of this knowledge, and we're suffering because we're without this knowledge of that relationship. You know, we have amnesia. There's an example that when someone has amnesia, then you bring so many things to remind them about their life. Like you may bring them pictures, photographs of people that were dear to them before they became struck with this amnesia. Or they may bring different articles or things like this. to jog the memory. And so similarly, when we engage in transcendental service under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, the electricity from the powerhouse is live. It's a live wire. And we get spiritual transcendental experience of our real identity, because we're literally factually reinstated in that actual occupational duty. You know, if I am an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when I actually engage or connect myself to his devotional service, then I'm harmonizing with my own self, with my real self. And there is some quote there's some verse from Krishna where he says that you come to, which one is it here? Know himself within himself in due course, right? So he understands that he will get transcendental realization of his eternal identity as Krishna's servant. And yes, that was the text 38. In this world, there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due course of time. So, it's worth noting that by performance of devotional service, we receive, or we're bestowed by the Lord with causeless knowledge and detachment. That by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he bestows those qualities to the living entity. We hear in chapter 10 that from within the heart, Krishna is ready to destroy the darkness born of ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge. And we hear from chapter 9 that, those who are devoted to me and worship me, or worship my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Right? And that ananyas chintayanto mam, that ananyas chintayanto mam, that they don't have any other concentration or any other meditation than the Lord. So what's amazing is that the process of devotional service begins with very simple practices which help the mind, rest in Krishna. Specifically, we're chanting and we're tasting Krishna Prasadam. And then from there, things can go more and more. And Krishna gradually, step by step, he gives knowledge. As we take a step towards him, he says, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Yayata mam prapadyante, tamstataiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartamanu vartante, manusha parta sarvashaha. That all men are following my path in all respects. That everyone is more or less moving in that direction towards full knowledge and full, realization of their eternal relationship with Krishna, and they're all at different steps. So if we're factually taking, practical steps by being connected with the Lord's servitors, then the advancement is very fast. And that's why it's so important that we're doing this transcendental book distribution, and that we're offering everybody a chance to serve Krishna immediately by hearing the holy name and taking Krishna Prasadam and maybe even chanting the holy name themselves. So these are our welfare activities. And it's very interesting because we've been speaking about this point. There's nothing so sublime as transcendental knowledge. There's nothing that will bring all peace, all satisfaction, all, end of suffering. We have to imbue our work with transcendental knowledge, which culminates in devotion. And we're meant to perform these works for attainment of that position of devotional service, which is stated by Rishabdev in the 5th canto, 5th chapter. He speaks to his sons and he tells them that we should perform tapodivyam. We should perform transcendental austerities. And what we can understand is that in this world, we're all doing austerities. We all have to kind of more or less fight a hard struggle against material nature. We're all fighting the influence of time, which is ticking, always ticking. And actually, more or less, we're all just very disturbed that our body's getting old, and we're really concerned that we manage our health, and we're really concerned we manage our bank balance, and we're really concerned that we manage our, our standing in the society or in the community, our prestige or our honor, things like this. But time will take all these automatically. And so the acharyas, they say, don't, more or less, don't waste time becoming perfect without developing Krishna consciousness. Even if artificially, Narad Muni tells Vyasadeva, even if artificially you give all your other work up, you give it all up and you just prematurely jump into, full-time, full dedication to Krishna consciousness activities, and we're lacking that maturity or we have a weakness of heart maybe, and we go back to material activities, there was no loss. But if we become perfect without developing Krishna consciousness or without performing Krishna consciousness activities, then there will be no gain. And so this is why this welfare work of this Krishna consciousness movement is called Pada Upakara, that we're doing the best thing because we're giving very widely the instructions and of the pure devotee. And so this movement, this ISKCON movement, this Hare Krishna movement is, we're sharing the book, we're primarily sharing the books of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And this is meant to create a revolution in the impious lives of a misguided civilization. Because as soon as this knowledge enters somebody's life, it's their life is changed. So even if somebody reads one word, or they read one line, or they read one page, or they read one of our books, then undoubtedly their fortune is very great, and they are very fortunate to have received this. So we work, now that we've been made fortunate by contact with the bona fide spiritual master in Parampara, Srila Prabhupada, now we work diligently, enthusiastically, selflessly to share this with others as much as possible. And actually, everybody is suffering without this knowledge. There's a wonderful verses that Prahlad Maharaj explains that people are without knowledge, and because of that, their senses are unregulated, and they're just chewing the chewed again and again. They're just performing activities without any transcendental quality to their actions. And they're just tasting a pleasure which is being compared by Prahlad Maharaj to the pleasure of chewing something which has already been chewed up. Just like a piece of sugar cane. If you're, you may come across a sugar cane field and there's like a tube. And in that tube, there's some fibers. And that fibers are full with sugar juice. Right? So it may be very nice. You take that, chew on that, experience some pleasure by that nice flavor. But as soon as it's been chewed, it's a fibrous stalk. It's like a stalk. It's very pulpy, very stringy. And so you chew it up and then you toss it on the road. If you're on a hike, or something, you may just throw it on the bush or something. And somebody comes along and they say, "Oh, wow, sugarcane." So that's what we're doing. And he just picks it right up and he goes on, chewing. So this is our business without any knowledge. And amazingly enough, Prahlad Maharaj is offered a benediction by Lord Nrsimhadev that Nrsimhadev is ready to give Prahlad Maharaj any benediction that he asks. And Prahlad Maharaj is very exemplary in this way, where he says, for myself, actually, I don't need anything because I have, essentially, because Prahlad Maharaj has the Lord's service, and then there's nothing else to want for him. But he's simply in anxiety making plans to rescue all the vimudhas, all the persons who are foolishly chewing the chewed or wandering about this material world without any knowledge of their relationship with Krishna. So we are meant to adopt that mood because that was Srila Prabhupada's mood, to unrestrictedly give opportunity to the whole world to take up this process, to become purified by the easy process of devotional service as inculcated or as propagated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, chanting, dancing, and spiritual refreshment. It's a very blissful process, Kevala Ananda Kanda. And as long as we continue to practice this Krishna consciousness in a proper way, which means following the mood, mission, and instructions of the founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, then this movement will have potency to deliver Krishna to everyone and anyone. And factually, it's happening. And people's hearts are being changed by this movement, by these books, because this principle of parampara has been kept intact. And so we have to be very, very pure and sincere and serious about following the instructions of the spiritual master. And we should do that. We should try our absolute best and pray for strength and pray for help to be able to advance in Krishna consciousness ourselves, to practice purely and to share this with everyone we meet. Thank you, devotees. Are there some questions? Jagannath, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the nice class. Very nice. This question is concerning what you said about knowledge and detachment, and how we get this when we engage. So, but I heard that I heard somewhere that knowledge and detachment isn't the ultimate goal. And if this, so what is the ultimate goal? Like, is it love? Is it love of, is it love of Godhead? Is it attachment to Krishna, or something else? I had another part to the question, but I don't remember exactly what it was. So that was all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. When so this topic of knowledge culminates in knowledge of Krishna. I think we were just hearing that when one knows Krishna, then he knows everything. So, and knowledge of Krishna is absolute. So, transcendental knowledge is fully spiritual. That's why it's called transcendental knowledge. It's not mundane. It's not material. So that's why Krishna's words are as good as his personal self. But when we cultivate knowledge and detachment, this is helping us progress in the process of devotional service, ultimately towards the ultimate goal of life, which is prema, which is stressed. Specifically, I was just hearing today that our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, coming, Vaishnavism, or Vaishnav culture, or this tradition is coming from Lord Chaitanya. Specifically, we stress prema a lot. That Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that this is the supreme goal of life, to reach pure love for Krishna. So we're working our way that direction. When we have knowledge, then our works are imbued with a transcendental quality, which liberate us from bondage. And then little by little, we advance in devotional service, and we can become completely clean from all contaminations. So this process, Chetodarpana Marjanam, we're cleansing the heart. And there's a lot of buildup of dust and dirt and gunk. And when that's completely cleansed, and we have perfect faith in the Lord and perfect surrender, then we will achieve that perfect platform of pure love, and we will be situated in our actual identity, as we are in the spiritual world. Of course, if we develop that knowledge and we act on that platform, what's amazing about devotional service is that we may not have full faith, but if we apply whatever we got now, and we act on that, or we do science, we just do some experiment. Okay, this chanting is kind of cool. Let's try it. Or these devotees are kind of nice. Let's spend time with them. Or whatever it may be. This food is very tasty. It's making me healthier. I like it. Let's eat it. Whatever it may be that we are have some faith, or another word is appreciation, and we just apply that rightly in accord with the instructions from the acharyas, and that will be guiding us more and more towards this pure platform of pure love. So on that point again, like if you just look materially, like knowledge and renunciation with Krishna are as good as Krishna in one sense. Like knowledge of Krishna is as good as Krishna. Renunciation for Krishna is also spiritual in quality. But without Krishna, those things are just another material. That's just another material kind of qualification. Like there may be a very learned person, academically speaking, which may have many degrees stacked up or things like this. But without knowledge of Krishna, all his work is binding, and he will have to receive a lower birth and be bereft of all such titles in a short amount of time. Similarly, a great renounced person without Krishna consciousness also is not performing transcendental activities. So, okay, devotees, thank you so much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the simple devotees.